Place of Grace. This is season 2. Well, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching our shows throughout the year. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the subscriptions. It's so much appreciated. So we're still expecting that in this season, you guys are going to subscribe, you're going to comment. We do want to see whether you like what we're doing, whether you don't like it. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you know whenever I post stuff. Well, in this season, to kick it off, I thought I should invite a friend of a friend to talk about healing from the loss of a loved one. So I made a few calls and I got a fabulous lady who has managed to heal through time, and she's going to share that experience with us. Welcome welcome to Marcia.
Thank you so much.
Please be free, be yourself.
Exhale, inhale.
Yes. You look like such a healed person, a whole person. Is that a right reading I'm taking from you?
So what? I'm the face of healing.
You might as well take the cup.
It's definitely a journey.
Yes, it is.
And it's a journey that starts. I don't necessarily think it stops. So I suppose what you're seeing is progress, but that has not necessarily arrived to destination.
Okay. Because just for context purposes, I want us to go back to when you received the call. I would assume you received a call. What does the call say and what goes through your mind?
Okay, so for me, it was not necessarily a call. So maybe just before we get to the call part.
Yes.
When Chico passed away, he passed away the Saturday before our wedding Saturday. So you can imagine it's the last weekend before the big event. My mom had been out of the country the two weeks prior to that. And she'd requested a final meeting with my side of the family as well as with him to get an update from him in terms of preparations that were happening with his family, anything that's outstanding that needs to be done in the final week pending the wedding. And we were due to have a meeting at my house in Pretoria North, and he'd been in Joburg the better part of that day, between work and business after hours. And so him and I had been on the phone, quite frequently throughout the course of the night, and I remember saying to him, "No, baby, don't worry. I've got this." I was able to give mommy feedback in terms of, what's been happening on your side of the family. Don't rush. I will meet you at home. By that time, Chico and I were staying together. We were staying in Centurion.
Yes.
I then left home at maybe around 11:30 p.m. to drive back to Centurion. And the last call that him and I had was at 11:45, and I was telling him, "Baby, I'm on the road. I'll meet you at home. Don't bother coming to the north. The meeting went well. I'll give you a full update when I see you later."
Yeah.
Right. So I got home, got into bed, slept. So what then took the format of a call, as you referred to, for me was a knock on my bedroom window. We were staying in a security state. So I was surprised by the knock on the window, because for you to gain access into the estate, you either have to have called Chipua to grant you access, or you would have had to have called me. So when I heard the knock on the window, I thought, this man, he forgot his keys. Yeah. So there I am, I'm thinking, Chipua, really, I have to get up and open for you. And so it was a knock followed by another knock, and I heard my sister's voice saying, "Chidzi, open the door."
That's strange.
Yeah, it was very strange. And I wondered, how did my sister gain access? Because I didn't get a call. And secondly, why is she knocking at the bedroom window?
Yes.
I opened the door, and as soon as I opened the door, she came in, and she was followed by Chibua's cousin sister and the cousin sister's husband. And I was surprised. What's going on? Yeah. And as soon as they walked into my living room, my sister said to me, "Chibua's been involved in a car accident, and we don't think he made it. You need to change. We need to go now."
Sure.
I heard her, but I don't think it actually sank in until I went back to my bedroom to change. And as soon as I got to my bedroom to change, my knees buckled. I gave in, and I fell. Luckily, my bed was there to catch my fall. My sister then just kind of came in, took a blanket, covered me in the blanket, and literally carried me out of the house into a car. So there I am driving out with my sister. When we got to the estate gate, my sister's husband was waiting. He jumped into her car, and then we had my Chikwa's cousin sister's cousin sister and the husband in their car behind us.
Yeah.
And then we were driving to the accident scene. So that whole unfold was what took the format of the call for me.
Wow. And then when you get there, when you're on your way there, what is going through your mind? Are you still moving in hope that it's just an accident? Or you were starting to process that there could be a possibility that he did pass away?
It's a feeling like I cannot explain. I think it's mostly numbness. It's you can't fathom. Your mind can't internalize it. It just feels so weird. I remember the whole drive. There were no tears. There were no emotions. It was just a very heavy feeling of numbness. And I remember saying to my sister and her husband in the car was, "What is this? What is going on?"
Like,
it didn't make any sense to me because I had just spoken to this man an hour or two earlier. We were at the height of our happiness. We were planning to spend the rest of our lives
in just
together.
a week's time.
In just a week's time, we were going to have a big celebration. Our dresses were ready, the rings were ready, the catering was ready, everything was ready, right? And now I'm being told that this man that I'm supposed to be spending the rest of my life with is no more. My mind just couldn't wrap the idea around, in my head. And the accident happened on Vetkoppen Road. So when you approach the accident scene, it's the terrain is such that you kind of come up from a high elevation and you drive down, right, before you kind of make an incline up the hill. And so from where we were approaching the accident, we were kind of like on high elevation. And from afar, I could just see a whole lot of lights, blue lights, red lights. And there was a lot of commotion I could see from afar. It was dark, it was still early hours of the morning, but I could see a lot of activity. And in my mind, I just thought, what? For me, it just...
Really, I can't, as you are taking us through, I'm also reliving that moment.
Yeah.
Did you, as you realize that the reality is that your fiance has departed, do you find that throughout the preparation of the funeral, you are present in realizing what has really happened, or you're still in a state of denial? What was going through your mind through the whole process?
Sure, I don't know at what point it hits you, but I definitely know that from the moment I was notified that she was no more, up until possibly when I came back home, I was just on autopilot. I was not necessarily taking any medication, but everything in me was dead.
Yes.
I was responding. I could hear you. I understood what you were asking me, but I was not necessarily internalizing any of it. I was not over processing any of it. For me, it was just something in my mind kicked in to say, there's a process that needs to be undertaken, and I'm at the helm of it. I need to lead it. I need to do what needs to be done, and we'll get to when we get to. So I think the emotions of it only came in after the funeral. Even
but I want to know that part. When all of us have come to the funeral, now we've gone back. Now it's you and reality as to what happens to you emotionally, mentally. What do you go through?
It's the most painful experience. There were so many emotions that overwhelmed me all at once. There was a lot of why.
Yes.
And my why was directed at God.
Were you mad at him?
For a very long time.
Do you, because I think death causes confusion a lot. Did you find yourself asking questions that you would normally never ask, considering your faith and where you come from background-wise?
Definitely. There were a lot of questions. There was a lot of anger. It was all directed at God. And anyone that tried to intercept that state of questioning anger would then become a casualty of the anger. So my church became a casualty of the anger because they tried to contextualize my pain,
Because mind you, a lot of us are coming to comfort people, not that we've experienced what they're talking about. Because I've recently asked a friend who lost her mom as well that, do you prefer that as we are conversating, I bring up your mom's name in question, or you want to bring up the topic yourself? And her response was that rather wait for me to say it. And then it means that at that moment in time, my mind is clear. What was it the same with you?
No, it was different for
Okay.
me. Chipo never died for me. There was never a point where I said, okay, there's a full stop now. We cannot talk about him. We shouldn't talk about him. For me, I just continued as though it was business as usual. So I would talk about him. It made a lot of people very uncomfortable.
Because we can start to think that maybe you are not so stable mentally, because you could be thinking he's alive, because we might be nervous to ask you that, baby, are you sure that you're okay? Because you're talking about him as though he is there.
There's a lot of truth to that statement that you're saying, because my early stages of getting therapy, my psychiatrist said to me that I was struggling with accepting reality. So I would come in for a session and we would run the session. I would make a lot of progress, but the moment I walked out, it was almost as though my mind would reset back to a position where he's still alive. And when I come in for a follow-up session, we're now starting from scratch. Exactly, yeah. Now we're talking about things that we've already addressed. So there was no progress that was being made, because for as long as you were engaging me, and I think if I hadn't been so robust with trying to deal with my grief, I probably would have just come across as another normal human being. But the reality of what was going on internally was that I was not accepting his passing.
It's because it just happened suddenly. It's not like he was sick or anything.
Yeah.
I know that you guys had a child already. What were your emotions and how were you able to still love the child while going through yourself?
Sure, it was the journey that I've taken with her since his passing has been interesting. At first, I didn't know what to do with her. I didn't know what to tell her. She was only 2 when he passed. She had just turned 2 the previous month.
Yes.
I didn't know what to tell her because we had just started learning to talk. So conversating with her on this level was pointless. But she knew her dad. She was used to interacting with him. You know, there was a certain time in the day she would look at the door because she knew that was the time when daddy would come back through the door. So that journey was quite difficult. I got a lot of help from psychologists and professionals in terms of how to communicate with her the loss, so that she understands what's going on.
True.
It was very important for me not to leave her behind while I transitioned through my grief.
Yes.
It became even more paramount to me that I make sure that I become her mom and her dad.
Yes.
You know, some of the actions I took were very exaggerated. My mom had to intervene.
It's a good girl.
Yeah, just slow down, you know. But I wanted to make sure, and I've still got that weakness. It's just that now I'm more conscious of it.
Because I think what happens when you do have the resources, you overdo everything. You just want to give this child more than what ordinary kids would be, because you don't want them to feel the gap of daddy not being there.
Correct.
And so it's, what would have my husband been doing? I'm sure he would be doing, you know.
Yeah. So it's a challenge. You definitely do overcompensate. Yes. Financially. You will overcompensate on certain things. You even realize that I'm actually going to spoil her in the process. Which it's almost as though you can't help yourself.
Yeah.
Then you struggle with creating a balance where you're raising a well-rounded child, where you want this child's story to be, my dad passed away when I was young. I don't even remember him, but my mom stepped up so much so that it's almost as though I never felt a gap.
Yeah. I want us to go into the field of the in-laws. You had not officially been married. What? Is it confusing now when you have to, I would question, should I sit on the mattress? Should I sit? Like, what happens when it concerns in-laws through that period?
Well, it was, for us, it was not very confusing. Because Chipo and I had been married in terms of customary law 2 years prior.
Yes.
So what was coming was the white wedding.
Yes.
So for all intents and purposes, I was his wife. I was known as his wife. I interacted with his family as his wife. And there were decisions that had to be taken where the family needed to consult him, they would come through me where necessary.
Yes.
So there was no confusion with that. I think what just became a compromise was when it comes to the whole sitting on the matras process.
Yeah.
Chiku was an only child to his mother.
True.
Right? I couldn't dominate that space all by myself.
Yes.
I felt she needed the attention. She needed to sit with me. So we sat together. The whole time we sat together.
Okay. I know people that have been married for years. They will be getting along with their in-laws throughout their marriages. And then come passing day, our war breaks, man. Health is the problem. You know, we started well, but now we are debating over resources. And I think this question is important in the sense that when we're still a young couple, you could find that the beneficiaries were not updated, but responsibility-wise, I already had a child with this person who's starting a life.
Right.
I want you to speak to it in two processes. In terms of the burial, did you find that you had the resources? And after that, how do we deal with the issues of money, guys? It's like, how do we?
It's a lot. So in terms of the burial, we were a young couple. We were just turned 30 when we passed.
Yes.
So we were both 30, we were a young couple. So we didn't have a lot, But and in terms of policies being in place, and it was still starting stages. We didn't have a whole lot of policies, but by God's grace, I had enough resources to bury my husband.
Yes.
I took on the role wholeheartedly, completely.
Yes.
And anyone else from the family, either from my side or from Chiko's side of the family, if they came to the table, for me it was just an extra, but I had no expectation.
Yes.
So I think
that's the best, not to have it. But you can only do that when you've got your personal resources.
I suppose that, and the fact that as far as I was concerned, Chiko was my husband. So anything that concerned him was my responsibility, and I took it on completely.
Yes.
So I think from the point of view that in my mind, in my heart, I was resolved that this man was my husband. Where his affairs were concerned, I would step up all the way, right? And anything that came on the side was an extra for me. I didn't have any expectations.
Yes.
So from a burial point of view, I took on the lead. I had a lot of help. My in-laws came to the table in a big way. My family came to the table in a big way. I had a lot of support from his employers, my employers, friends, cousins, etc. But we didn't have any issues with the burial. It went well. I was happy at the end of the burial. I think his mother was happy as well that we gave him a dignified send-off.
Yes.
Then to the second part of your question. Sure, that's a difficult one.
Make it easy for us.
That's a difficult one. So, grief, there's something about grief and resources that is messy. Unfortunately, the relationship with my in-laws it's not where I would have liked it to have been, especially because I have a child with their son, and even though my life is expected to move on, she will always be a part of their lives. She's one of them. It's not what I would have wanted it to be. It's been a roller coaster ride. There have been squabbles, there have been challenges. And I think where my relationship with the in-laws are concerned, or where the estate or any monies are concerned, I've just taken the position that grief has a way of messing with you.
Yeah, because it's confusion.
Right? Such that I think once a person is gone, you kind of just want to hold on to whatever little that is left that resembled them or that had to do with them. And in the process, you may overstep boundaries. You may come across as overreaching.
Yes.
So where I felt my in-laws were overreaching, I've tried to find comfort and peace on ways that I lost him, they lost him too.
True. It could be that it's nothing devious.
That's where
we all equally feel we owned this person. We had a piece to this person.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the approach I've just taken it. I've never confronted them with how I feel. This, if they watch this will be the first that they get to hear me say it.
Yeah. But do you think, because how important, now in hindsight, how important is it for couples getting married, or those that are already married, to get their paperwork in order. Because I know for sure, I probably have not even updated my policy, but it's mistakes like that. But in hindsight, how important is that?
It is imperative.
Mm.
I can't express how important it is because once a person is no more, it's the papers that speak for them.
True.
Right?
And it's much as you know their wish.
Yeah. It's difficult. I shared a bed with the man. We had a lot of pillow talk. But then it becomes my word against theirs. You know, it becomes my word against what he spoke to, what he told his mother, or his father, or a cousin, or whatever. You know. So, and I think it's very imperative that people actually make it a culture that they update their policies regularly, so that you're not even sitting in a position where a person is saying, but this will was last updated 10 years ago.
Yeah, you know.
So how do we know that 10 years later conversations have not changed? You know, it's very important. Not only does it help with the administration of your affairs when you're no longer, but it protects those that you leave behind,
yes,
who now have to deal with talks or conspiracies, or you know, any of that.
And then, do you find that now, I don't know in your case, because you're saying that the relationship with your in-laws is not where you would have wanted it to be. Do you find that, maybe in your mind you're asking yourself that when you have to move on, do you have to go tell them, or you just like, guys, you know it's over?
So, it's twofold. So in as much as I acknowledge that the relationship is not where I would have wanted it to be, there's a blessing in that as well.
True.
Because it makes it easier for me if I have to move on, right? I'm not going to be entangled on emotions or expectations or attachments because they're no longer there. Unfortunately, the whole estate process has kind of compromised the relations. So from a guilt perspective, it's kind of released me. Yeah. But then it doesn't take away from the fact that if I had a choice, I definitely would want relations to be different.
Yeah. And then people often say that time heals. What has time done for you?
Time has allowed me to normalize grief.
How's it?
I personally don't think time heals. The way I try to explain it is that it's like something that you do regularly, right? Once it becomes a regular and everyday thing, it's no longer magnified. It just becomes a part of your everyday, right?
So you still feel pain?
Oh yes.
Do you think with that pain, I don't know, because it could be maybe the pain is what you just learned to live with, I don't know. Would you still be able to love and get married again with that pain existing? And then how do you separate your new spouse not feeling like they're competing with your ex-husband?
They wouldn't be competing. And that's why it's not every man that can marry a widow.
Yes.
Because they have to be mature enough to understand that they're not coming in to compete, but to create their own space in the heart.
Yes.
And everything is going to be different. It has to be different. He would not be Chipiwa. No one can ever be Chipiwa.
True.
And it would be a fruitless exercise to compete with him because he's Chipiwa. If I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. I think the confusion comes when, while we're married, she just breaks down. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like, am I, is this person present, or?
That's why it's not for everyone.
It's not.
It's not for everyone. It's for the few. And I even think that the few that I'm referring to don't even know that they are the anointed ones until they actually get into it and they realize that I've got a lot of capacity.
True, I've got a strength already.
I've got a big heart, I've got a lot of room, I'm capable of loving this woman through her pain, with her pain. I understand that her pain has made her who she is, which is what I found, which was what I was attracted to, and I love it. It's a whole package. So it cannot be that I would want to remove her past or her pain or experiences, because then she becomes less of what I fell in love with or what I found attractive about her. Yeah. So it's definitely not for everyone.
If you were guaranteed an answer today from God or the power that holds the universe, whatever you call it, what would you ask?
Sure, we would need like a whole month.
Oh wow. Welcome we get that from?
We would need a conversation that would probably take a whole month, but probably right at the top of my list would be things like, have I, they say everything happens for a reason. Have I seen the reason for Chipo's passing when he passed? Am I living according to your will? Insofar as my experience with the grief is concerned, am I getting it right with Orifuna, my daughter? Considering that she was a blessing to both of us. She named her Orifuna because we believe God loved us by giving her to us. Am I getting it right with her? Is Chipo okay? Is he safe?
I think we all want to know. People all want to know what's happening with the people on the other side. And then, are you joyful? Are you happy? Are you, hopeless?
I am. 5 years later, it's going to be 5 years now in July. I can definitely say that I feel alive again. It was a good 2 years, give or take, there where I was, I think, dead. I was living physically, but emotionally I was dead. I am happy.
Good to hear.
I see things I never used to see.
True.
Life is, it's different. I'm not the same Chidzi that I was before Chipo passed. I've grown a lot, but I am in a good space.
I think we're out of time. In closing, what has life and death taught you?
In death, you take nothing with you. So you gotta live life right now as you get it. Don't waste time on fruitless arguments, or just don't waste time, because all you really have is time.
It's all,
That's all you really have. You're not going to take
it for granted when our spouses are still alive that there will be that day where one of us is not here.
Get over that argument quickly.
True.
Tell them you love them more often. Go out of your way to do the extra things that make them feel loved. Because when they're no more, you think back to the times where you missed opportunities.
You did.
And it's painful.
True. And then in closing, what would you say to a person who's experiencing loss of a loved one, a parent, be it a spouse? Like, what would you say to them?
The pain of grief is so intense that I don't believe that there's any person that would intentionally go out and choose grief over any other pain.
Yes.
So I believe that grief chooses you, right? And when it chooses you, that means God saw something in you that makes you capable of carrying it and handling it. The hope is what has carried me. And I think anybody that's grieving that still has a little bit of hope. And just to get through. The rest, God steps in and He does it. I don't know how He does it. He's so great.
Okay. I want you to answer me in a word of what I'm going to say. So I'll say yes, and then you complete it, and then you close it. Okay. God is
awesome.
Joy is
life.
I am.
Wow. I am strong.
You are.
I am strong.
I hope you enjoyed the interview.
I did. It wasn't long enough. I had so much to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope what I've shared helps someone in some other way, somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys were blessed and you're gonna find healing through watching this show. And we wish you all the best and all the time. We hope God heals you as you're going through the grief. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, comment, give us everything you guys want to know. Whether you like it or you don't like it, we are open to it. Thank you for watching. Bye.